Good morning, America. It's Saturday, August the 1st, 2015. It's about 8:25 in the morning. And what I want to talk to you about is a couple of things, but primarily this JADE HELM exercise that's going on, this special operations type exercise that's going on in places like my home state of Texas and Utah and other places throughout the South and Southwest. It appears it's also going on in other states, even up north and northeast and stuff like that, but they're just not calling it that. We're seeing lots of joint operations taking place between active duty military of all branches and civilian law enforcement agencies. Let me start off by saying you may not be aware of this. In fact, I think a lot of people are not aware of this. Otherwise, we'd be seeing massive demonstrations and calls for the arrest and charging of everybody from the president on down for, authorizing these kinds of operations. It is illegal for the U.S. military to engage in any type of operations that involve civilian law enforcement. That's a violation of what's called the Posse Comitatus Act, which I believe was passed back around 1878, okay? The reason this law was passed is because, first of all, by law, by the Constitution, we're not really even supposed to have a standing, professional, permanent military on our turf here in the United States. And the precedent for that is way back in the days of the Roman Empire, the Roman military was not allowed in any type of large numbers to even enter the city of Rome for fear that someone in the leadership might use them to just completely take over, okay? That is why our founders, when they set this country up, they made it law that we were not to even have a standing army or Marine Corps or whatever. We were to maintain a sufficient Navy to protect our coastlines and things like that, but not to have an occupying military like at big bases like Fort Hood, Texas, and Fort Bragg, North Carolina, and Fort Lewis, Washington, the various bases around the country where there are thousands and thousands of troops. We're not supposed to have that. We're supposed to keep ourselves able to raise and train a military force rapidly if we see that we're heading towards a potential conflict with another nation for some reason. Number one, it's a major drain on our economy. And I'm not against the military. I'm retired Army myself. My military occupational specialty, or my job was, I was a senior intelligence analyst. And I have been involved in many operations, both in training and what we call, quote unquote, real world, with every type of combat arms organization we had in the military, to include Marine Corps, Naval, Air Force. I have been on operations with Special Forces teams, Ranger units, infantry, armor, artillery, combat aviation, name it. I used to get loaned out to go and provide intelligence support for many different kinds of units. So I know a little something about how Special Forces, Special Operations is structured, what their mission is, and how they operate. Now I'm going to get into this JADE HELM thing. This JADE HELM thing, you'll hear everything from a little-eyed Joe to a damned if I know as far as opinions concerning what this is really all about. But if you go online and you look at the logo, the official government, Special Forces, Army logo, the symbol that represents this exercise, there are a couple of things that are particularly disturbing about the logo itself. Number one, Down at the bottom of the logo is the statement, master the human domain. Let that sink in for a moment. Master the human domain. And this exercise being conducted in these United States, okay? Master the human domain. While you're chewing on that one, I'm going to move to an even more disturbing aspect of the logo for the JADE HELM 15 exercise. In the very center of the logo itself is a very interesting little ghost-like picture that's almost transparent, you know, I mean, it's almost invisible, but you can see it. And it's a picture of what most people, you know, would recognize as a little Dutch boy or little Dutch girl's wooden clog or shoe that is a traditional type of footwear in Holland amongst, you know, the traditional Dutch people. But it was also worn by other, you know, people in other European countries, like, you know, in France and in Germany and Belgium and Switzerland, other places. Now, there are a couple of things besides the little typical Dutch boy, stereotypical picture, or Dutch girl, whatever. There are a couple of other things that are a little more disturbing about that symbol being in the center of the logo for a special operations exercise being conducted inside the United States. Number one, that shoe, that type of shoe in French is called a sabot. Sabot. S-A-B-O-T. Which is the first part of the French word sabotage. Sabotage in our language. Which I'm sure everybody knows what sabotage means. The reason that shoe is called a sabot, or sabot in French, or whatever, is because back in the old days, during the beginning of the Industrial Revolution, there were a bunch of French workers at a particular factory in France that were growing very, very unhappy with the unsafe working conditions and the substandard pay that they were getting and everything. And they decided to express their displeasure at their working conditions and lack of money, lack of pay, by throwing their wooden shoes into the machinery at the factory, sabotaging it. So you could say that wooden shoe in the center of the JADE HELM logo might be representative of the intent to commit some type of sabotage, which is disturbing in and of itself within our own country by our own military. As to what type of sabotage it could indicate, who knows? But there's an even more disturbing link to what that little wooden shoe symbolizes. There's a much more disturbing link, and that is, that was the standard issue footwear that the Nazis issued to all incoming personnel at their prison camps / death camps, happy camps, whatever you want to call them, where they exterminated millions and millions and millions of Jews and gypsies and anybody who resisted them and so on and so forth. They all wore those wooden shoes. And you can go online and find this out for yourself. There are photographs of these shoes being displayed in display cases along with the striped pajama uniforms that they made their prisoners wear. And the reason they used these wooden shoes was, for one, they were very cheap to manufacture. Number two, it's very difficult to run away when you're wearing those because they just fall right off your feet. And number three, after they gassed or burnt, incinerated, or other methods of murder, after they murdered the present occupants of that prison camp and they brought in the new group, they could just pass those shoes on, you know. So the other thing I will tell you about that logo is, since I've been involved in discussions and meetings to design logos for exercises and stuff, because I was always part of staff planning for, combat operation exercises, training maneuvers, things of that nature. There's a lot of thought and a lot of planning that goes into setting up these logos and designing them and everything. So someone knew in the planning process what that wooden shoe is a symbol of. Now, there are only 3 known things that wooden shoe symbolizes. The traditional footwear of the cute little Dutch boy or Dutch girl, or like I said before, the 2 more disturbing symbols: sabotage or being in a prison camp. Sorry about the noise. I had to crank my truck back up. I'm about to deliver a load of steel. So, you make of it what you will. I'm just giving you a little food for thought. I don't know what their real intent is, but based on the research I've done and the reports that I've seen, none of it indicates anything beneficial to us as Americans. None of it. And when you put it all together with the fact that they've been closing down, Walmarts left and right, and people have been sending in video and photos of heavy military activity at these closed down Walmarts, being walled off and all this kind of stuff. And then there are the reports and these are verified reports too. You can go find out for yourself. Apparently, big corporations like Walmart and Target, Home Depots, Lowe's, these places that have these big mega stores, apparently they have been in business with the government for some time, and they are apparently part of the COG plan, the continuity of government plan, that was outlined in government documents like Rex 84, that got one of the things that got Mr. Oliver North, American hero, in so much trouble, setting up prison camps for Americans for the future. There appears to be a plan in place to incarcerate a great many of us throughout the country. And there are many indications that incarceration is not the final phase of the plan. There are many indications that, in fact, and I don't wear a tinfoil hat. Remember, I used to be in the business of what they call intelligence, okay? There are many indicators that part of the plan is not merely extraction, rendition, interrogation, and incarceration, but I'll give you another Asian that they seem to be headed towards, and that's called extermination. If you're one of these people that'll blurt out, "No, that can't happen here, you're crazy," and blah blah blah, well, before you make any comments like that, I would strongly encourage you to go and do a little investigation yourself. Now, I know the internet is rife with all kinds of bullshit as well. You have to kind of use that human discernment ability that most of us have, that bullshit detector that goes off whenever you know it's bullshit. But there's too much video, photo, and audio evidence, quotes by major government figures and major corporate figures, and major international figures, people in power, they've let the cat out of the bag a number of times in certain statements that they've made. That all you have to do is go do the research. You put the big picture together, and you'll see that someone has some very nefarious plans for us. And when I say us, I'm talking about those of us who believe the Constitution should be followed no matter what. Those of us who believe that our government is out of control and acting in a very tyrannical fashion increasingly as each year goes by. And those of us who have the background and skill sets to possibly even organize a viable resistance. We are the people who will be at the top of what some people call the red list. The list that needs to be eradicated right off the bat whenever they do decide to let the hammer drop. Now, what's going to make the hammer drop? Your guess is as good as mine. I lean towards the possibility of an all-out economic collapse. I do not have a college degree, but I'm probably about 6 months away, if I were to go back to school, to having 2 college degrees. One would be in history, world history, and the other would be in economics. So, needless to say, I've been a student of history most of my life. It was my favorite subject in school. Although, many years after school, I found out that we were definitely not taught our complete history. Many things were left out and, in fact, lied about. And what does this guy want me to do, for crying out loud? Learn your hand signals, son. Anyway, our history, many things have been left out of it, okay? I happen to believe that our history is way more fascinating than anything we learned in school. I happen to believe it's a lot older as well. I happen to believe there are many things that we're lied to about. I don't really know where to begin on that one. It's a really big story, but I would encourage people to really go and look behind the story, do some digging. I would also encourage you to adopt the mindset that much of what you see and hear in the media is highly deceptive at best. There are many things that they lie to us about. Oh man, where to even... First of all, I try not to watch very much TV, to be honest with you, because I have found out, I've verified for myself that pretty much ever since they invented television, they've known that the signals that are used to broadcast that picture and sound can be modified to affect our human brain in such a way that it deals with frequencies and all that kind of shit. But without all the technical gobbledygook or whatever, they're able to manipulate our brain waves with TV transmissions. It has to do with alpha waves and shit like that. But basically what they're able to do is the same thing that some hypnotists are able to do, which is put you in a a state of high suggestibility and influence, something similar to a waking dream state. Now, if you search within yourself and reflect back on times that you watch TV for an extended period of time or whatever, you'll kind of know what I'm talking about because you felt it yourself. You get up out of your easy chair or off your couch or whatever from watching a lot of TV. You know how you get the feeling kind of zombie-like or whatever from being exposed to it for a certain amount of time? Well, that's not accidental, and it happens to just about everyone. That's because your brain chemistry and I don't know, frequency is being screwed with. Okay, they've known how to do this for a very long time. And when I say they, man, that's a oh my God, that's days worth of discussion by itself. Suffice to say, they are the wealthiest, most powerful people in the world who own the biggest, most powerful corporations in the world, and who wield an unbelievable amount of influence over not only who is elected or selected, but what they do while they're in office. Okay? You've heard the names before, the Rockefellers, the Rothschilds, and all that other tinfoil conspiracy hat bullshit. But unfortunately, it's true. I used to think all that crap was conspiracy too, but over time I began seeing things in the intelligence field, different documents that I'd lay eyes on, or different communications that I would be privy to know about, things like that. I mean, it's a culmination of many years of seeing things that made little questions pop up in my mind. But suffice to say, I've confirmed a lot of things for myself. I leave it to you to, either call bullshit or confirm it for yourself, because no one can convince you that any of this shit that I'm saying is true, because you don't know what you don't know. It's that simple. And people are hesitant to believe bad news. And I'm not saying, fuck it, I'm gonna go out and, cut my throat because it's all over or anything like that. No, hell no. I'm not at all saying that. We have a lot more power than most of us believe or know. We truly do. But in order to effectively use that power for good, we have to come together. We have to stop all this race shit and this homosexual, heterosexual shit, and this, all these issues that, quite frankly, were not as much of an issue until we got our first so-called black president. Isn't that something? Now, a lot of you will sit out there and go, oh, well, that's because Whitey hates the fact that a Negro is president. No. Actually, this Whitey has got a little Negro in his blood going way back. And I know that. And I don't have a problem with that. And I don't have a problem with a Negro president. Okay? But first of all, the dude ain't 100% Negro. He's half Negro. I blame his white half as much as his black half for what he's doing. But he's a puppet. Presidents are puppets. They have been for a long time. They don't have any real power. They are manipulated and controlled by the people who truly have the power. The power of the purse string. Power of influence. We got to get over all this, hating each other. We are being divided and conquered. Pure and simple. Sun Tzu, Art of War. One of the oldest concepts in warfare. You don't have to spend so much time fighting your enemy if you can turn them against themselves and fight themselves. Okay, divide and conquer. Everybody knows this. This is the most divisive president we've had since Abraham Lincoln. I mean, yeah, this supposed emancipator of the black people, it turns out. Yeah, go back and read some of his statements. Yeah, black folks won't like him quite so much then. Go back and read some of the historical accounts of what Abraham Lincoln said. Direct quotes about how he felt that the Negro was inferior and, you know, did not want to see them gather in large numbers and did not want to see them become educated, and they would become a problem for the white man and all this other kind of stuff. I mean, Abraham Lincoln was not what he's been taught to be. Rebel flag is not about what you think it's about. that X on that rebel flag, first of all, is the cross of St. Andrew. It's not, it's a religious symbol. He wanted to be, when he was given the choice of how he was to be killed, and they were leaning towards crucifixion, he didn't want to be crucified on a cross as Christ was, because he wasn't worthy. He wanted his cross to be in the shape of an X if he was going to be executed that way. That's why it's called the cross of St. Andrew. It is not a racial symbol. A lot of people don't know this, but what was it? Almost a quarter of all the troops that fought on the side of the Confederacy, the South, were black. And they were not forced. They were told that if they fought for the South, they would have their freedom. The South was their home too. Most people who owned slaves they treated their slaves more like family members. There were a very, very select few that were looked down upon by most white Southerners, by the way, that actually mistreated their slaves. And they were usually the biggest and most powerful and most wealthy slave owners. You know, we've got this picture in our mind of all Southerners back in the day being, whoosh, you know, whip crackers. That's where the term cracker came from, you know. But no, it wasn't so, man. But you gotta throw that damn history book. You need to burn that damn thing. Throw it in the trash. Because that was cherry picked, you know? And a lot of it's lies, just outright lies. If you go do some research on your own, honest to God research, okay, you will find that a lot of that is bullshit. Southerners, blacks in the South and whites in the South have actually historically gotten along with each other a whole lot better than blacks and whites up in the North. I mean, I work all the time with black folks, white folks, Hispanic folks, whatever. Down here in Texas, I mean, you know, we've had our own, you know, little racial incidents and stuff like that on both sides or all three sides or whatever at different times, you know. But man, those are so remote. Those are so few. It's not at all as prevalent as it's made out to be in the media and in movies and things like that. I mean, this is all, you gotta understand, I mean, these kinds of things are played up a lot more than they're even worth. I mean, come on, they don't make when the media makes a big deal out of something, you need to pay attention. Pay attention, go behind the scenes, look behind the story, look for the story behind the story. There's an agenda at work, okay? There's a serious agenda at work. There's an agenda at work with this JADE HELM exercise. There's an agenda at work behind the fact that it's getting so much exposure. And the types of exposure it's getting. When you look at that, and you look at the fact that in the last 6.5 years since Barack Obama's been president, we've had an unbelievable amount of mass shootings, you know, this single lone crazy white guy, you know, these mass shootings that have taken place. You know, how is it that all of a sudden, you know, this kind of crap starts taking place? And only one of those is one that you could say, you know, may have been racially motivated, was that putrid looking, squirrely ass little crazy bastard that shot up those people in that black church. You know, information's come out about that a lot of people, it's not really being, you know, reported on in the press, like the type of drugs that he was on. Now we're talking prescription drugs here. I'm not talking about crack or heroin or weed or anything like that. This cat was on some of the same kind of shit that same dude was on. The Joker killer that went in that Aurora, Colorado movie theater and started popping all those people in there. The same kind of drugs, in fact, that Sirhan was on, the guy that supposedly assassinated Robert F. Kennedy. The same kind of drugs, in fact, that Lee Harvey Oswald was on, who supposedly, you know, killed JFK. If you believe that, then I got some oceanfront property in Arizona to sell you. But the same kind of drugs that the kids that did the Columbine massacre were on, you know, behavior modification drugs, things of that nature. Ted Bundy, serial killer, not Ted Bundy, but Ted Kaczynski, the Unabomber, who it turns out also that a few of these individuals have been verified to have been heavily involved in DARPA programs of these are brain manipulation, mind control type experimental programs run by DARPA. That's a government agency, the Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency. These are the kind of guys that are these eggheads, these, you know, evil genius types that are trying to figure out how to make super soldiers, cyborgs, crazy ass sci-fi type of shit. This is what they're into, that fringe type of stuff, you know. How to do remote viewing, you know, how to get inside someone's mind, you know, men who stare at goats type of bullshit. That's kind of, that's the agency that deals with that kind of shit. Well, that little cat that shot up at a movie theater up here in Aurora, Colorado, guess what? He was in one of those DARPA mind control experimental programs. That's proven. So was Ted Kaczynski, the Unabomber. And there have been a few others I just can't call off right now. Go look it up. I'm giving you little points here. It's already gone on longer than I meant for it to, but I'm just trying to hit a few points as they kind of pop up to pique your curiosity enough to where you'll go and look at it yourself. Go do some kind of research, you know. I'm gonna start making more of these as I have time. It's hard to find the time because I stay so damn busy, but these are very important issues that are going to affect all of us very soon. The indicators are all there. More things are happening every day to indicate something bad on the way. I can't pretend to know exactly what it is. I have a few ideas. None of them are good. I do have some ideas about it, and I base that on evidence. You know, that's the way I work. I don't subscribe to crazy ass theoretical shit. I'm one of these kind of people. I like to have evidence before I shoot my mouth off about something. Because if you don't, then later, you know, you're made a fucking fool of. And nobody likes to be made a fool of. But we're all being made a fool of right now as we speak. as I'm making this video, I'm looking up in the sky and I'm seeing jets fly over, leaving these long trails that just don't dissipate. Therefore, they cannot be water vapor being heated up by the jet engines in the upper atmosphere. That is physically impossible. The way it is physically impossible for me to suddenly sprout wings and take flight. It's that impossible. Studies have been done, samples have been taken, and every one of those trails that have been studied so far, where balloons have been flown up and sticky panels collected, all this, barium, strontium, aluminum, these are all highly toxic to humans, animals, plants, you name it. There's evil at work in this world, folks. That's enough for now. I'm not going to go into any more of this because I have a tendency to just go off on a damn tangent because it's all got me freaked out. So I'll make another one if anybody cares and get into some more details about what I know. But I'm not a know-it-all, but I've been studying this kind of shit for the last 25, 30 years. So I have a half-ass idea what I'm talking about. Until next time.